Welcome to the mother of all talk shows with me, George Galloway, MP on WBAI.
People of America, this is the President of the United States. You are listening to George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows. George is a Scotsman, unlike me, an Irishman. Enjoy.
Yes, a Scotsman and an Irishman who's now a member of Parliament for a northern English city, 40% of whose voters are from the black and minority ethnic communities in Britain. So I guess that means we're speaking to, and even to some extent for, a considerable part of the world, certainly informed by the perspectives from which we come. You are amongst the special breed of Americans listening to WBAI, one of the very few progressive voices in American public life. And you're listening to a British Member of Parliament who has something of an internationalist cast of mind. That's why, even though I know nothing about what's happening in America right now because I've been fixated on the north of England, you're going to educate me as I hope to educate you. Educate, agitate, and organize. These are the three parts of the rubric on which I have based my life. I hope sometimes I educate you. I hope sometimes I agitate you. And I certainly hope to help organize you, because without organization, all the ideas in the world are, well, almost meaningless. And one of the lessons of the great victory in Bradford West a week past Thursday, which was the greatest election victory for the left in the entire history of British politics, and even in psephological terms, the most sensational by-election result since 1945, it was a long time ago. It's, I think, filled with possibility in terms of how it fits in with the events that are unfolding across the world. In France, for example, we have the real possibility that the left candidate, Monsieur Mélenchon, who is standing against the right and the moderate left, is going to get 15 to 20% of the vote, which means that he'll defeat the far right Front National, which is an anti-immigrant racist party, anti-Semitic, and a thoroughly bad sort in any sense of the word. Mr. Mélenchon is on course for an electoral sensation. In Greece, of course, as you know, and we've spoken about this many times before, things are unfolding in a similar way. In Germany, a party like ours is called Respect, by the way, which is called Die Linke, which is the left party in Germany, a very significant force has been born there. So we think that in Europe, this development of which the Bradford West victory is a part is filled with hope for the future. Question is, does the United States have any counterpart to this? Is the Occupy movement dead? Is the Occupy movement the answer in any case? What are people's attitudes to the forthcoming presidency, where it looks like Mitt Romney and Barack Obama will be the two main combatants in the ring, fighting for the presidency of the United States? I'm out of the loop, but I do know that Rick Santorum has just pulled out, which means, I suppose, that Mitt Romney is the Republican flag bearer. Because we're now in an electoral period, and because WBAI is a not-for-profit organization, I cannot openly proselytize as to how I think you should vote in that. Although I suspect most of you have already reached the conclusion that the president you've got, though he's been a huge disappointment and in many respects has betrayed many of the hopes that we had in him, is likely to be, well, more in tune, at least, with the listenership of WBAI. But you tell me, I can't preach to you. So Ife, as always, is making this show possible, and I'm ready to answer any and all points on any or all political issues from any or all parts of the world. Ife, do we have a first caller?
Not yet. You know, it's been a minute. So yeah, I guess they're still trying to see if it's really you.
Talking then, because it was something that I think probably came out of the blue. I didn't have time to inform the listenership of WBAI that a by-election, which means a special election, because the existing member of Parliament for Bradford West stood down on grounds of ill health. Labour, which held the seat for more than 40 years, my old party, from which I was expelled by Mr. Tony Blair over my role in the opposition to the Iraq war, thought that they could sneak the by-election through very quickly and have no problem at all about holding on to the seat, especially as the government, the Conservative government in Britain, has been going through one of its worst ever periods. So they called the quickest possible election. 3 weeks was the election period. Our campaign lasted 2 weeks and 2 days, and we turned British politics absolutely on its head. We went from a result in 2010 for respect in that Bradford West constituency of 1,250 votes to a sensational 18,127. I won 56% of the popular vote in an 8-party race, getting more, obviously, than all the other parties put together, all the major parties put together, which is simply off the radar, simply off the scale. No one could quite believe it, except us. We were absolutely convinced that we were going to win, and by the day, we were convinced we were going to win handsomely. But there's handsome and there's handsome. Nobody quite expected that I would have a majority of more than 10,000 votes, which is completely unprecedented in an 8-party race and in a by-election. So it was probably surprising news to those WBAI listeners who know about it, but it didn't come as a surprise to us, because the campaign that I waged, Ife, was against war, against austerity, against mass unemployment and poverty, but also against the traditional braderyism, which is a kind of mafia-ism, which exists within the Asian population in Britain, where elders with beards make decisions about where the entire community's votes will go. Those elders with beards mostly started out the campaign intending to move their community in support of the Labour candidate, who was himself a part of that bradery or brotherhood. He was a Pakistani Muslim candidate in an area where nearly 40% of the voters came from a Pakistani Muslim background. But they didn't reckon on me entering the race, and as soon as I did, this began to shatter that paradigm. And my goodness, how it was shattered by the end. Even the elders with beards were on our battle bus by the end of the campaign, moved by the women in their households, as has been recorded most clearly in the Guardian newspaper, which was the only newspaper to cover the by-election campaign and the only newspaper to kind of get it right. It was women and it was young people who were persuading their parents and their grandparents and their father-in-laws, who are obviously very powerful in these kind of societies, that something new had come on the scene, and a rethink was in order. And my goodness, how they rethought. But I won the election in every part of the constituency. That means that in areas that are known as white areas, areas where hardly any Asians live, I still won in them, which is the biggest surprise of all to those of the commentariat who still can't quite get to grips with the scale of this victory. So it gives me a new platform, one that I already held for almost 25 years. I'm going back into Parliament after an absence of 2 years. It's a new Parliament with a lot of new people in it, and with, of course, with a new government for me to attack. So I warned them in my newspaper column this week. This time, it's no more Mr. Nice Guy. I come not as the accused, but as the accuser of the British establishment, dripping in blood from head to toe, which has been a part of the massacre of more than 1 million people, spreading hatred and fanaticism across the world, and has beggared the British population through, first of all, a boom in which very few of the ordinary people in Britain shared, followed by a slump in which the ordinary people are being asked to pay the price for economic policies from which they didn't benefit and which they didn't frame. So that's basically the background to the election. And you tell me, Ife, if we have any callers. If we don't, I'll keep talking, because as you know, I can talk all day.
Well, you know, you have plenty of callers now.
Okay.
And you have Ian from New Zealand on the line.
Ian in New Zealand on WBAI in New York in the tri-state area. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, MP Galloway. I just wanted to, I'm calling from Auckland, Occupy Auckland. and I'm just saying congratulations on your victory.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
all the way to Auckland.
Yeah, we're also organizing for May Day as well.
Yeah.
I know there's talk of big, massive protests in the States. So I just want to show my solidarity with what's going on in the UK.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell me about New Zealand. There was, for a time at least, a party quite like ours. Yes. What you might call a left of Labour alternative. Is that still going?
That's right. It still is, but there's still very ugly backlash. And just recently there was a police killing of a Maori and a Fijian youth by the police, and so there's struggles going on there, just like there is in New York, in Wales, and Sanford, Florida.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on. As well, just organizing, women organizing, Maori women organizing in, for May Day and for women's struggles and so on and so forth.
Marvelous, marvelous. Well, I hope they take heart from our victory. There is a New Zealand contingent from an organization called Kia Ora.
That's right.
On our next convoy to Gaza, which leaves very soon, later this month, and hopes to arrive in Gaza on the 15th of May. I think it leaves Bradford on the 22nd of May, I think.
Yes.
So a big up to my friends in New Zealand. Thanks very much for calling.
Thank you,
I appreciate that. Aoife, do we have anyone else?
Yes, you do. You have John from Queens coming up next.
John in Queens, welcome back to the show, my friend. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to make a comment about the immigration. I think when someone comes to this country and they have 2, 3, 4, or 5 children, and they deport that person and keep those children, and I believe sometimes those children become delinquent and become creating problem for the society. Instead of deporting that person, don't you think they should give that person a permit to work? This way that person can take care of his or her children?
Yes, well, of course, America was built on immigration. If there was no immigration, the United States would never have been the country that it has become. So it always amuses me when I hear people with names that obviously originate far from the Americas, getting hot under the collar and getting all racist about immigrants. I would have thought that human beings are the greatest asset that any country could have. And the last time I looked, the United States was largely empty. So I don't think that they should take the attitude that they do to immigration. Immigration should be seen as a benefit, not as a debit on the account. But I'm aware, of course, that sometimes people who are themselves the product of immigration want to shut the door on other people who are arriving as immigrants. And that would be amusing if it wasn't tragic. Thanks for that call. I appreciate that, John in Queens. Let's go on to the next one. Aoife, do we have a third?
Yes, you do. You have Steve from Central Valley, New York.
Steve in Central Valley, New York. Welcome.
Hey, George. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good. My question is related to income inequality, class warfare, and the Buffett rule. I was listening to the Laura Ingraham show yesterday evening, and I find it incredulous that the far right basically is charging, basically alleging class warfare on the left for looking to bring more equality and progressiveness to our tax code. And I just wanted to get your views on the subject. If you think about it, it's really the top 1% that's waged class warfare, in my mind, on the middle class, by gutting our pensions, by busting unions, and by using our investments in our 401ks to basically fund and support their capitalist ventures in making bad investments and basically using our money to enrich themselves. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the subject.
Well, I agree entirely. There has always been class war. As Marx put it, the history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggle. And sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's covert, sometimes in previous periods it's the left that has been accused of waging class war. But now we're in an era, and have been for the last 25 years at least, it's an era in which the 1% is waging class war against the rest of us. But we, by definition, can only win the class war because we are many and they are few. The question is, as Bob Marley put it, we have to free ourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. If we can persuade enough people that the economic and political model under which we live is one which is designed for and by the 1%, and that the 90% can never win in that society, and reach out to the middle class and make an alliance, make a coalition between the poor and the middle class, by which I mean those who have nothing to sell except their work, and that if they didn't work, they couldn't live, they couldn't eat. That's the vast majority of people, you know. The vast majority of people don't own property. They don't take rents from other people. They don't live on profits from other people. They live only on their wage or their salary. And if they didn't have a wage at the end of the week or the end of the month, they wouldn't be able to eat. If we can unite all those, plus those enlightened members of the ruling class, and they do exist, there's nothing could stop us. We could change the world. We could change America, change Britain, and change the world for the better. Don't you think?
Absolutely, George, and that was beautifully, beautifully put.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Thanks for the call. Let's take the next one, Ife.
Yes, you have Nick from Seacliff, New York.
Nick in Seacliff, New York. Welcome.
Hello, George. Long time no speak. How are you, sir?
Very well indeed. I'm tip-top right now, as you can imagine. Thanks.
Yes, I understand. Now, I think you remember me, George. I'm the former social worker turned police officer.
Yes, I do remember you, yes.
Yes, how are you?
Very well, yeah. It's great to hear from you again.
Thank you, sir. We're in the midst of a firestorm in this country and in Britain, and this has been brewing a long time. I had made this point earlier on another program. We're militarizing our police. We have cops out of control shooting people of color. We have bad training, bad leadership at the police level. And, you know, they rise them to their highest level of incompetency, you know, the Peter principle. Yep. And this is spinning off all around us, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So hopefully the 99% will use their heads, and, you know, we'll do the right thing and get the right people in for change. At least I'm hoping that.
Well, I think this is a consequence of the failure of the ruling elite to keep their equilibrium. They've lost their footing. And fascism is always the first weapon that discombobulated ruling class thinks of. Now, we don't have fascism in America, and we don't have it in Britain, but we have elements who are trying to force the police and the state down that direction of authoritarianism and so on. We have to argue with the police that they are a part of the people. They live in the same neighborhoods as the people, and their relatives are amongst the people, and they should not themselves be used as agents by the 1% to try and clamp down on the just demands of the 99%. And I don't know if there's been any systematic work done on that, but it seems to me that it has to be done. We don't want to clash with the police. We don't want to clash with the armed elements of the state. We want them to realize that they're a part of the society, and the society and the state are not the same thing. Well, thanks for that call. This is the mother of all talk shows, back on WBAI, serving New York and the tri-state area.
Here he is, comrades. George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows, guaranteed to destroy all weapons of mass deception.
That's me, guaranteed to dispel and disperse the clusters of weapons of mass deception, at least trying to the best of my ability. Aoife, do we have another call?
Yes, and you might need to give out that number again as well, because will
you give it out for me? I don't have it in front of me.
No problem. It's 212-209-2900, 212-209-2900, and you have Jean from Jersey on the line.
Hi,
Jean in Jersey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the great campaign, and I would like you to talk about the general strikes in Spain and in England to inspire us in America, or the U.S. America, which has not had one general strike, and also the idea that we really need to have a 30-day general strike so we can stop the system and turn to socialism. I'd like to hear what you have to say in terms of women and people of color leading that in a leadership role.
Well, it's easy to call for such a general strike, quite another thing to achieve it, and quite another thing to know what we would do with the power that would fall into our laps as a result. We're a long way from that, either in Spain or in England, and much further away from that in the United States. But there's another issue that has to be faced by progressive people. We don't live in an era where general strikes mean what they meant, because the workforce is wholly different from the workforce in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, even the 60s. We live in a very different economic and social picture. It's not different in its fundamentals, but it's different in its makeup. And there are huge numbers of people that need to be won to the progressive cause who are not organized workers, who are not in unions, and for whom the idea of a general strike is meaningless. There are small business people, there are people who are unemployed, there are people working in professions for whom a general strike is meaningless. We need to make a coalition of organized working people, people of color, women, people who are amongst the most oppressed in our society, the immigrants, the minority ethnic communities. We need to find ways of bridging all of these things, because they are what makes up the 99%. The 99% are not blue-collar, trade union card-carrying people for whom a general strike is the obvious answer. I have no doubt that in any revolutionary situation, general strikes would be a part of the developments that were going on. But let's start uniting people and organizing them, educating them, agitating them about the possibilities that lie ahead of us. And
okay, well, in your campaign, how did people of color and women take leadership roles?
Well, they burst onto the scene. It was a truly extraordinary thing to witness. It was watching theory become practice. I told you at the beginning of this brotherhoodism, where the elders in the society effectively moved thousands of people in previous elections and in other respects to the polls to vote for whoever the brotherhood had pledged its loyalty to. But we, by coming into this campaign and by projecting our ideas, and I hope doing so well, captured the hearts immediately, particularly of young people at first and then women. And those young people and those women began to work in their own households. And these are extended households, of course. It's not just ma and pa and the kids, it's ma and pa and the kids and her ma and pa and his ma and pa and his sisters and brothers. By the grace of God, these people have large families, and they talk about politics, and they talk about elections in particular when politics is at its highest, politics is at its sharpest. And they were arguing that this guy, Galloway, stood for us and defended us, and he defended the cause of our co-religionists in other parts of the world. He's got a message about the poor and about the unemployed. He's got a message about the society in general. He is a tribune of the 99%, and we should be with him. And slowly but surely, over a 2-day period, that happened. And by the end, the reason I knew that we were going to win handsomely was because we had 500-600 people maybe working in our election campaign. And every one of them was part of a family of 20 or 30 people. And the people just going past in the cars, flashing their lights, sounding their horns, was all an indicator that we had a wave going on. And it was really something to behold. unfortunately, it was all off the radar. Nobody was reporting it, though obviously people are now trying to piece it back together again, because this story, more than 10 days later, nearly 2 weeks later, is still the biggest political story in the country. And it's good to be at the center of that, I must say. Thanks for that call. Aoife, do we have another?
Yes, you do. You have Paul from Staten Island.
Paul in Staten Island, welcome, sir.
Yes, it's very encouraging. It's fabulous. Fabulous. There's always hope for that people will transcend the ordered, controlled environment in which they live.
Yeah.
I want to say, one of the biggest tactics is divide and conquer. I think especially in the United States, you see a guy like Al Sharpton come out. I believe he's actually paid to be a saboteur and foment religious, take any little incident as serious as they are, but to foment division and hatred. And that's the biggest tactic, the 1%ers. And that's what a big one we have to realize is be very careful of their who they're supposedly trotting out as their spokespeople.
Well, I don't know anything about that, and I can't endorse that characterization of the Reverend Sharpton. But there are decades when nothing happens. But there are weeks when decades happen. And those of us who consider ourselves to be leaders have to be preparing all the time for those weeks. And when they happen, to seize the opportunity, to seize the day, carpe diem in Latin. And we hope to do that here in England, and I hope that we'll succeed. But of course, our enemy is powerful. It's been in control for a very long time. It has money. It has media. And that's all the more reason to support alternative media like WBAI. Aoife, give me the next one, please.
Sure. You have a caller that wants to be called Everyone from Everywhere on the line.
Everyone from everywhere. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And I'm not going to talk just only to you. I'm going to talk to everyone everywhere. And what's going on, on our planet is we have criminals who are building weapons and causing wars and brainwashing everybody to go to war with each other and kill each other. And what's happening is our whole planet is so polluted that we don't have too much time longer to be staying alive on this planet. So what I want to do is I want to inspire everybody to start putting these guys on trial. And if found guilty, put them in jail. Last week, you said just about 3 or 4, maybe 5 seconds of 2 of the criminals on this planet. One, his name is Bush, and one is named Obama. If you want to, you can tell people a little more about that. But I'm going to give you just the names of about 7 guys and ladies who should be put on trial. Andrew Leverist of Dow Chemicals, Ellen Coleman of DuPont, Hugh Grant of Monsanto, Jeffrey Emmett of General Electric, Patricia Wirtz of Arthur Daniels Midlands. Now, I could go on, but the general public doesn't know a goddamn thing about the 444 deadly Chernobyls, Fukushimas we got all over this planet that right now are absolutely cancering and killing us. Should I go on, or should I give you a little chance to talk now?
Well, I think you made some very powerful points. Again, as with the Reverend Sharpton, I can't comment or endorse the chart sheet that you drew up. I don't know many of these people, and WBAI has to be careful what it says. So, on the general point, you're right. Capitalism kills. Capitalism has killed more people than Hitler. The existing economic and political system that we have has massacred people all over the world through poverty, through hunger, through unequal development, through environmental depredation, through war, which ineluctably flow from wars which ineluctably flow from a defense of the economic and political situation that we have. So capitalism is the biggest killer in the world. And the points you made earlier in your contribution about the brainwashing of people to go to war with each other has been a part of my credo all my life. And it's one of the reasons why in this last decade or more now, I've concentrated on trying to stop the wars. And we have wars still going on. Afghan people are still being massacred. And soldiers that are sent there in the occupation armies are themselves coming back in boxes, stiff and cold. And there are still these maniacs still talking about the need for more wars, this time, the next time, against Iran, for example. So there's no doubt that capitalism is a huge killer. Individual capitalists, well, I'll leave you to have your own views about them and their particular culpability, but the system itself is a major killer. Ife, do we have another call?
Yes, you do. You actually have Emmanuel from Brooklyn.
Emmanuel in Brooklyn, welcome to the show.
Yes, Mr. Galloway. It's a pleasure to hear your voice.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question and a comment, something that's a very thorny issue. It has to do with this perception of race, and especially as it applies to what would be considered self-identified white progressives. And I say self-identified for a reason, because it seems to me whenever there's an issue that comes up, that it might be a human issue, that it's just an issue of injustice, and it happens to be considered a racial issue, that somehow white progressives, especially in this country, seem to want to shy away from the blatant fact of what it is. And it might be coming from a guilt factor because of the way that the system structures itself, that it always gives a little more to the buffer. So it will give a little more to the self-identified white people, and then they're able to defend the system in a guilt-type way and not see the issue for what it is. And so therefore you get this whole kind of, yes, I'm with you, but it might not be what it is. And there's this kind of delusion that goes along with, quote unquote, white progressivism that really is like a cog in the system in terms of actually getting to fight against that system of injustice. Because I think that people who self-identify as white usually end up getting a little bit more crumbs off of the table. So they're more reluctant to go with the human factor of the situation instead of denouncing their whiteness. It's always somehow defending the system that it's not really what it is, because they might be considered as traitors, or they don't want to see the situation as blatantly as it really is. There's something about that keeps the struggle not moving forward.
Well, that's a very acute. That's a very acute observation. I have slight difficulty in dealing with it in this sense. For some reason, whether genetic or through nurture or through, I don't know, a divine chance, I have never in my life seen things through a racial prism. Ife, my friend who's running this show, is a really cool, fabulous black woman. And I've been lucky enough to meet her a few times. And I never felt in any sense that she was any different to me. Whereas with many white people listening to this maybe, really hate me. And I probably would hate them if I knew them. And I don't love Ife because she's black, and I don't hate them because they're white. I hate them and love her because of who they are, not what color they are. So it's difficult for me to put myself in the shoes of this self-identified white person, even though I'm as white as can be with blue eyes and an entirely European heritage so far as I know. And of course, none of us entirely knows that. But you're right in the sense that you identify that the divide and rule that the previous caller was talking about is most obviously practiced on a racial level. The reason why poor whites in the southern states of the United States of America went along with and supported with their votes and even their ropes the system of Jim Crow and the Klan and segregation and so on was not actually because they had anything really to gain from that system, just that it meant that somebody else was worse off than them. And the crumbs that you talk about, the crumbs off the table, were all that they got out of it. The poor whites lived a miserable life in the southern states of the U.S., but they could put on a suit and hang a black man and feel that they somehow had a part of the system. Of course, we have to relentlessly, endlessly struggle against that. And that's why I didn't identify with the criticism of Sharpton, because I don't know the specific case that was being referred to. But Sharpton, to me, insofar as I know him, which is relatively limited, is a person who relentlessly struggles against this fake, false consciousness of racial divide. That's how I see it. Ethan, give me one more.
Yes, you have David. David from New Rochelle on the line.
David in New Rochelle, welcome to the show. David, go ahead. Unfortunately, we seem to have lost him. Ife, are you still there?
Yes, and you have Aziz. Aziz from Manhattan.
Hey.
Aziz in Manhattan, welcome back. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. This is a special call. I spoke to you before, but I'm not going to mention it. This is a special call to just express my happiness for your success.
Thank you.
And I am so happy, and I'm a good friend of BAI. And I spoke to you before about Miral, the movie.
Yes, wonderful movie. I watched it on your recommendation, I think.
Thank you so
much.
Anyway,
I've spread the word about that film everywhere.
Thank you so much. I'm doing my work. I will update you what I'm doing right now, but this is a special call. I just want to express my happiness for you.
Thank you so much. Anybody who wants to write to me can now do so at GallowayG@parliament.uk. GallowayG@parliament.uk. Thanks, Aziz. I appreciate that.
You will hear
from me. This is the mother of all
soon.
talk shows, all right. This is London Calling.
Are you leaving, George?
Yeah. That was me giving you a cue, but it's just one of the difficulties we have talking across the Atlantic.
Well, because I know that's your.
Have another call?
Yeah, because I know that's your cue to end.
Yeah. No, I wasn't leaving. No.
Oh, okay. Yes, you actually have Cheryl from Queens.
Oh, hi.
Cheryl, welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Galloway, and congratulations on your win over there. That sounds wonderful.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. I don't agree with the man speaking about Mr. Reverend Sharpton. I'm a white person who does listen to him frequently on his radio show. And I know he's on a TV show, and perhaps referring to that, one could think someone placed him there or something, but on his radio show, he's the one who has put himself he's the one who goes on the radio daily, and he helps the people deal with these things that happen in their community. He's there for them, and I think think he's doing wonderful things in his life. That's my...
Well, that certainly has been my impression, which is, as I say, a limited one. I've spoken to him once on the telephone, but I've never met him. But like everybody else in public life, especially if you speak millions of words on TV and on radio and in the newspapers and so on, some of your words are better chosen than others. Some of your actions might have been done better. I've no doubt he's made mistakes, as I have, as anyone in the public eye has. But in his heart, it seems to me that the Reverend Sharpton is on our side.
That's right. I think he is, and I can tell by when the people call in, they're depending on him. He's there every day for I think 2 hours. I get it late at night, but we get it here in New York 8 to 10. But he's down, in the afternoons, and these very bad things are happening, and it gives these people there's a place.
And we don't have that many leaders How long will we let them kill our prophets, as Bob Marley says in in Redemption Song. Well, look, thanks for that. I appreciate it very much indeed. Let's press on because time is running. Aoife, do we have any more?
Yes, you have Linda from Princeton, New Jersey.
Fabulous. Lots of women callers. Linda, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Galloway. Congratulations to your constituency that you won.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
To the gentleman who was a couple of callers before me speaking about whites vis-a-vis, or progressives vis-a-vis black Americans. To me, if we were to spend the next 20 years just dropping everything on the left and working on nothing but the issue of racial justice, we might get 10% of the goal achieved. The vitriol, the bigotry, etc., against blacks in the United States right now, even by my white friends, who are not malignant in their bigotry, they're quiet about it, is still so enormous, and it's a tragedy. It makes me cry. A black person is a black person 24/7. We can't let that issue rest. And
I agree with that.
It is terrible.
The only caveat I would make is this, and this is something I've practiced all my life. If I meet a racist, I don't walk by.
Nor do I.
And I don't slap their face.
No.
I engage with them.
Yeah.
And I did it a lot in Bradford. There's a lot of really poor whites in Bradford, who have, through this false consciousness, become, people who blame the other.
Yeah.
Not the rich. They don't blame the system. They don't blame the politicians. They, identify to a grotesque extent with British imperial war and so on. But they blame the person who's different to them in the same street, and who moreover has a better sense of community and society than they do. They go to mosques, they have clubs, they have halls that they meet in, never very good, but they meet, and they have a collectivity, which poor white people don't have. And the poor white person has privatized himself into his own family, or even into himself. Often they don't have a family, or they've lost it. And they take recourse in alcohol and sometimes in drugs, and certainly often in hatred and alienation. So I engage these people. I go after them. If they shout abuse at me, I go after them. Literally go after them. I touch their shoulder and turn them round and force them to talk to me. And I give them my phone number. There's one young man in particular, by the name of Nicky, who I won his heart. And yet he turned up at the launch of my campaign to shout abuse in defense of British imperial policy. But I talked that fellow round. I persuaded him that his interests were the same as the black guy up the road. His interests for a job, for security, for a better life were exactly the same. The only thing different between him and them was that they prayed and their face was slightly more brown than his.
Well, I agree with you, George. But one thing I'd like to refer people to, I don't know whether it's on Google. This Mike Wallace died this week.
The journalist, 93, died at 93. I just saw that a minute ago, yeah.
And I would encourage people to, if it's on Google or somewhere, to check out the interview that he did with Lorraine Hansberry, the playwright who wrote Raisin in the Sun, probably in the 60s. And for both blacks and whites. Now, she was raised in an upper middle class family in New York. Mike Wallace didn't know what he was about to encounter. He went in there with all of his assumptions about blacks, which he'd been raised with. And he did not engage her as a human being. She became a target in the interview of every inadequacy he felt. And anyway, what I wanted to...
Very interesting. No, very interesting. You made your point very well.
To check it out, that the assumptions that we make about other races are based on our own inadequacies from the way we've been treated by this system. We pass it on, and it's our great loss not to re-examine that. And if we can convince people that by eliminating other people from our consciousness, etc., if nothing else, it's already happened to us. The fact that we're doing it to others.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't even speak
great
anymore.
point. You made some great points. Yeah. Thanks very much for the call,
George.
indeed.
Take care.
Ife, do we have another?
Yes, you do. You have Joel from Union, New Jersey.
Joel in Union, New Jersey. Always great to hear from you. Go ahead.
Oh, listen, I want to celebrate your incredible victory. I mean, not just a plurality, but a real majority. And I wanted you to comment. And by the way, that last call was worth a week's worth of radio. She was fabulous, terrific, and I wanted to thank her personally. I wanted you to comment on some of the very critical races that are even somewhat in the image of yours. We have Elizabeth Warren running for Ted Kennedy's old seat in Massachusetts. We have a guy named Rob Zurban running against Paul Ryan, and he really believes he can beat Ryan. I mean, Ryan is such a toxic person on our political scene. And also, if you'd comment on the coup that forced out Mohammed Nasheed from the Maldives. I just saw the movie last night, and he was such a breath of fresh air, a real leader who has the best interests of his people and the world at heart, as opposed to all of these corrupt leaders who are advancing the corporate and imperial agendas.
Well, Joel, I know more about the Maldives than I do about Massachusetts. So
okay, or Wisconsin.
I wouldn't be able to, but I'm sure the listeners have heard what you said, and I will catch up on the various races that are happening in the United States. But the coup in the Maldives is indeed very regrettable and represents a setback for progressive people everywhere. We take 2 steps forward. We often have to make 1 step back, and sometimes more than one. And this is definitely a major setback for a progressive leader in a country which is of no great economic or political significance in the world, but is extremely significant to the people who live there and to those who were following that progressive model as it rolled out on the environment and on social justice and the rest. So it's highly regrettable. Highly regrettable.
Significance of the world.
Very moral significance. Yeah. Very great deal of moral significance. And
Thank you so much.
We have to be capable, as Che Guevara said, of trembling with indignation at any injustice visited on anyone, anywhere. Or we're not men and we're not women. Thanks for that, Joel. Go ahead, Ife. Do we have another?
Yes, you do. You have Mike from New Jersey.
Hey, how you doing?
Mike in New Jersey, welcome to the show.
Great show. Look, my descendants are all European. And on any given day, I could be an Italian, I could be a Puerto Rican, I could even pass for a Mexican. This idea of whiteness or blackness or whatever the color, as long as those color designations, by the way, I've never seen a yellow man, as one famous man on one of the shows on WBAI said, I've never seen a yellow man. This identification with this color, whiteness, profits certain types of people and disenfranchises others. And the same thing with blackness. The minute you play into this color thing, I've never seen, explain to me what a Hispanic is, because I'd like to know. I've got Hispanic friends. It's not even a race. So as long as we're playing by these phony race categories, in fact, somebody explain to me what white is. I'd like to know. $1 million to you if you can explain to me adequately what white is or what Hispanic is. Please. It's a phony way of controlling the masses, keeping them. It's a pie. You got the most of them identify with white. You keep those pitted against the other ones. It's that simple. Color is phony. Disassociate yourself from color, and everything will be fine.
Well, I agree to a very large extent with that. Hispanic is not a race. What is white? I'm pretty white, but I'm not. But I was hailed by the Voice newspaper in London, which is the main black newspaper in the country, as Britain's finest black political leader. And it began with the line, George Galloway may be a pale-faced brother, but he's a better black leader than any of the black leaders we've got in the United Kingdom. And I was extremely proud of that, not because of pigmentation, but because black is a political color. People are black because they're discriminated against. People are black because they're the victims of discrimination and hatred and are in danger of being entirely alienated from our societies on both sides of the Atlantic. So we need to reach out to people as people. As it happens, I'm a religious believer. I believe that we're all God's children, that God made us different for a variety of reasons, but that fundamentally we're the same, and that we are each other's keeper. Everyone is our brother and sister. This is my creed. This is what I believe. And I live my life in that way. Well, this is the mother of all talk shows. We've only got 10 minutes to go, less than. So we better press on if there are any more callers. Ife?
Yes, you have Ron from Buffalo, New York.
Ron in Buffalo, New York, welcome.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks a lot.
Okay,
I'm glad to be back on WBAI.
Yes, it's very good. I've listened to you all the time. I have a question or a series here. You've been talking about how it seems now that in Europe the organized left is making an ascendancy due to the economic collapse and the austerity measures put in place and that type of thing. And in the United States, of course, we don't have an organized left. We have a right and we have a kind of a squishy middle, kind of squishy liberal center that sometimes tries to sound like FDR, but usually more like winds up being more like Dwight Eisenhower. I'm kind of wondering, is there a fear? And a lot of people on the left, that's what passes for the disorganized left here, people like myself, are very worried that in the United States the next decade or so we could see a real emergence of an authoritarian government here. I mean, one that really essentially is, you want to call it fascist, you can call it whatever you want, but is there a fear of that in Europe, and a fear that because of the might of the United States, militarily we spend more money on all the weapons, than all the other countries combined, and we have an economic clout even as battered and kind of inefficient as it is sometimes. Are people in Europe worried that if this could happen, that a totalitarian or authoritarian government could take over, and if so, that it might try to destroy the left in Europe, and what could be done about it?
Well, it's a good question. Of course, we must always be mindful of the danger of authoritarianism, even fascism. It existed in Britain within the lifetime of people who are still alive today, and it's something that we can never take our eyes off. And there are some parts of Europe where the parties of the far right have done well, but not in Britain. The parties of the far right are disintegrating and falling apart, and their vote is virtually non-existent. In France, as I said earlier, the vote of the so-called far-left candidate, he's not far-left in my view, he's a former minister in the Socialist Party government of Jospin, Mélenchon. He's on track to win between 15 and 20% of the vote and eclipse the far right. So I think that we're making great progress here in Europe. I don't know the situation in the United States. I think it's important not to exaggerate it. The United States is not yet, and hopefully never will be, an authoritarian state or a fascist state, but there are people who want to take it in that direction, and they have successfully done so in some respects. But we oughtn't to exaggerate it, but neither should we ignore it as a real possible outcome of the current economic and political crisis which is faced by the people of the United States of America. My last point would be this, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way. You're really no longer as mighty as you were, and we don't spend our time fixating about the United States anymore. Those days are gone. This is not the era of madmen. The United States has a huge military machine, but it doesn't work, and it is being defeated by men in bare feet with sandals and Kalashnikovs and improvised explosive devices in the occupation of Afghanistan. It was defeated in Iraq. It had to leave under fire and having failed entirely in its objectives. If it attacks Iran, it will be defeated again. So, hard power isn't enough. If you don't have economic power and you don't have soft power, then all the hard power in the world will not guarantee you hegemony on the earth in this new era. And I think we should all say hallelujah to that, because we don't want superpowers. We want equilibrium and balance in the world. And that's the direction in which we're traveling, I think. Aoife, can we squeeze one more in?
Actually, we are overtime.
We're overtime.
Yes.
That's a good sign. It's been a great show. Thanks to Aoife. Thanks to all of you for listening and calling. Stay tuned to WBAI, and God willing, I'll be here in the same place at the same time next Wednesday.